Hello, everyone. Welcome to Say It.
Hey everyone, so happy you are here with us today. I am Mike.
And I am Sarah. Mike, something happened this week that I have to tell you about.
What happened?
So, my friend just moved to a new city, and she sent me a message to tell me about her new apartment.
Oh, nice. How is she settling in?
She loves it, but the message she sent me, I had to read it twice. She wrote, "I finally moved in my new place last weekend," and then later, "I left my keys onto the counter before I went out."
Moved in my new place. Left my keys onto the counter.
Both sentences feel almost right, but both have the wrong preposition.
Both of them?
Both, and that is exactly what today is about. 3 small words that every English learner uses every single day. To, into, and onto. They look simple, they sound simple, but getting them wrong can completely change what you are saying.
And by the end of today, you will know exactly which one to use and why.
But before we start, please subscribe to Say It wherever you are listening right now. Every new subscriber helps us reach more learners just like you.
Now, let us get into it.
To, into, onto. There is one idea behind all 3 of them, one framework that explains almost everything.
Just one?
Just one. Are you ready?
Ready.
All 3 words are about movement, about direction, about where something is going, not where it already is.
So they are direction words, not location words.
Exactly. And here is the key. You already know 3 location words: in, on, at.
The cat is in the box, the book is on the table, she is at the station.
Perfect. No movement in any of those. Everything is already there. Now, to, into, and onto are simply the movement versions of those same 3 words.
So they work as a pair?
Exactly as a pair. At becomes to, in becomes into, on becomes onto.
So she is at the station becomes she walked to the station.
Right. She moved toward a point. That point is the station. That is to.
And the cat is in the box becomes the cat walked into the box.
The cat crossed a boundary. It went from outside to inside. That is into.
And the book is on the table becomes he put the book onto the table.
The book landed on a surface, the top of the table. That is onto.
So the spatial idea is the same. The only difference is one describes where something is, the other describes where something is going.
That is the whole framework, and there is one test question that follows from it.
What is the question?
After the movement, where did it end up? If it ended up inside something, that is into. If it ended up on top of something, that is onto. If it just arrived at a point, that is to.
Inside, into. On top, onto. At a point, to.
And here's an image that might help. Think about a building. You walk to the building. You arrive at the entrance. You walk into the building. You cross the door and you're inside. And then you put your bag onto the reception desk. It lands on the surface.
3 actions, 3 words, all in the same journey.
And once you see that, you'll start hearing it everywhere.
Inside, into. On top, onto. At a point, to. Let's put it to work.
Let's start with the simplest one. To, the destination word. You are moving toward a point, a place, a person.
And this is the one learners reach for most often because it covers the most ground.
It does. Go to the store, walk to the window, drive to work, fly to Paris. The destination changes, but the idea is always the same. You are heading somewhere and you arrive.
And that last part matters. You arrive.
That is what separates to from another word learners sometimes confuse it with, toward.
What is the difference?
To means you reached the destination. Toward means you were heading in that direction, but you may not have arrived.
So she walked to the shop. She got there.
She got there. Now, she walked toward the shop. She was heading that way. But the sentence does not tell us if she arrived.
That's actually a really useful difference.
It comes up more than people think. Now, to also appears when you give something to another person.
Like she gave the book to her friend.
Or he sent the email to his manager. She passed the phone to me. He showed the photo to everyone. The thing is moving from one person to another. That movement, that transfer, is to.
So to is not just about physical places, it's about anything you are moving toward, a place, a person, a destination.
And there's one more thing about to that catches people out.
What's that?
A lot of fixed expressions use to, and you simply have to learn them as chunks. Welcome to, similar to, close to, married to, used to, due to, according to.
None of those involve movement, really.
None of them. They're just fixed. The preposition is to, and that's that. You cannot change it or guess it. You just learn it.
So to covers three things: moving toward a destination, transferring something to a person, and fixed expressions you simply learn.
And there's one thing to does that into and onto never do.
What's that?
It appears before verbs. I want to go. She needs to study. He likes to run. That to is not a preposition at all. It's just a marker that says the next word is a verb.
So when someone writes, "We chipped in to buy him a present," that to belongs to the verb, not to the word in before it.
Exactly. They're two separate words doing two separate jobs. And that's important because it explains why we sometimes write into as two words and not into as one.
So the space matters.
The space matters, at least in writing. But we'll come back to that when we talk about mistakes.
To, the destination word, moving toward a place, transferring to a person, and fixed expressions you simply learn.
And once you have to, let's talk about what happens when you don't just arrive at the door, you go through it.
Into, you're not just arriving at the door, you're going through it.
That is the image, a boundary, a threshold, something that separates outside from inside. And into is the word that says, I crossed it.
So every time something moves from outside to inside, that is into.
Every time. Walk into the room, get into the car, jump into the pool, pour water into the glass, put the letter into the bag.
Let us apply the test. She walked into the room. After the movement, where did she end up?
Inside the room. She crossed the boundary of the door. That is into.
She jumped into the pool. After the movement,
Inside the water. He crossed the surface of the pool. Into.
the test works every time.
Every time. Now, into also does something that surprises a lot of learners. It describes transformation, when one thing changes and becomes something completely different.
Like the caterpillar turned into a butterfly.
The caterpillar crossed the boundary of one form and entered a completely new one. That is into, doing the same job, crossing a boundary, just in a figurative way.
Water turns into ice. She made the spare room into an office. The book was translated into Spanish.
All of them. One thing crosses into another. The spatial logic is identical, just applied to transformation instead of physical movement. And what about collision? I hear that a lot.
That is into for collision. He crossed the plane of the wall with his face. The car crashed into a tree. She bumped into his tray. He slammed into the door.
He crossed a boundary he really did not want to cross.
Exactly. And this brings us to one of the most useful phrasal verbs in English, run into.
Two meanings, same phrase. First, the literal one. The car ran into a barrier. That is a collision. The car crossed the plane of the barrier with force.
And the second meaning,
I ran into my old teacher at the supermarket. That is an unexpected meeting. You collided with someone figuratively. You were not planning to see them. They appeared and you crossed paths.
so run into someone means you met them by chance.
By chance, without planning it, and the spatial logic is still there. You crossed paths with someone unexpectedly.
What about burst into? I hear that a lot.
Burst into is into for sudden entry into an emotional state. She burst into tears. She crossed into the state of crying suddenly. The audience burst into applause. The building burst into flames.
So you're entering a state, crossing into it very suddenly.
That is the idea. And now, one of the most important uses of into for everyday conversation. Be into something.
As in, I am really into jazz.
I am into jazz. Are you into rock music? She got into yoga last year. He was never into sports.
And the spatial logic?
You have crossed into a state of deep interest. You are inside it, fully engaged. When you are into something, you are not just interested from the outside, you are in it.
So, I am into jazz means I have entered the world of jazz, and I am living inside it.
Exactly. And notice, the test still works. After the crossing, are you inside something? Inside a passion? Inside an interest? Yes, into. Check.
Now, I want to go back to something from the beginning of the episode because I think I made a mistake just now.
What did you say?
When I said she climbed into the roof to fix the tiles.
Yes, that is a problem.
Because if she climbed into the roof, she is inside the roof, inside the ceiling. That is not possible.
It is not. She would be inside the structure of the building, which is not where you fix tiles from.
So the correct sentence is, she climbed onto the roof.
She landed on the surface of the roof, on top of it, and that's the word we're talking about next.
Into, the boundary word. Cross a boundary, enter an interior, transform into a sudden state, and be into something you love.
And if you ever wonder whether it's into or onto, ask the test question. Did something end up inside or on top?
Onto. You are not crossing a boundary into an interior. You are landing on a surface.
That is the image, a platform, a table, a stage, a roof, something flat that you arrive on top of. And onto is the word that says, I landed there.
So every time something moves and ends up on top of something, that is onto.
Every time. The cat jumped onto the table. She stepped onto the stage. He climbed onto the roof. They loaded the boxes onto the truck. Snow began to fall onto the cars.
Let us supply the test. The cat jumped onto the table. After the movement, where did it end up?
On top of the table, on the surface. That is onto.
She stepped onto the stage. After the movement,
On top of the stage, on the surface of it, onto.
and compare, she stepped into the building. After the movement,
Inside the building, she crossed a boundary, into.
same verb, different preposition, completely different spatial idea.
That is exactly it. And onto appears in a very modern context that learners use every single day.
Digital transfer.
Upload your photos onto Instagram. Save the document onto the desktop. Push the new code onto the server. The data is moving and landing on a digital surface, a platform.
So the spatial logic works even in a digital world.
It works everywhere. Now, there's one area where onto trips almost every learner up: transport.
The bus and car question.
The bus and car question. And the rule is actually very simple once you understand the spatial idea. Large public transport, bus, train, plane, boat, you get on or onto.
Because you were stepping up onto a platform. You board it from below.
Exactly. Get onto the bus, get on the train, get onto the plane. You are landing on a surface, the floor of the vehicle, by stepping up onto it.
And a car or taxi.
You get in or into because a car is a small enclosed space. You step down and in. You cross a boundary into an interior.
So get onto the bus, surface. Get into the car, interior.
And when you leave, get off the bus, not get out of the bus.
And get out of the car, not get off the car.
The exit follows the same logic as the entry. Off for surface, out of for interior.
That is actually very clean once you see it.
It is. And now, the most important use of onto for everyday conversation. And this one I really want everyone to remember.
Which one?
Be onto someone or something. And this is where onto and into could not be more different.
How so?
Listen to these two sentences. I am into you. I am onto you.
Those sound almost the same.
They sound almost the same, but the meanings are completely opposite.
I am into you, that is attraction. I like you. I'm interested in you romantically.
And I am onto you. I know what you are doing. I have figured you out. I am suspicious of you.
So if someone says, I am really onto you, they are not saying they like you.
They are saying the opposite. They have discovered something about you, and you should probably be worried.
That is a very important difference.
Confusing those two in a real conversation would be a memorable moment for all the wrong reasons.
And onto something without a person means you have discovered something important.
I think we're onto something big. The researchers feel they're onto a major breakthrough. You are moving toward a discovery, landing on it, arriving at something significant.
And in British English, get onto someone means to contact them.
I will get on to them tomorrow about the meeting. I was on to the airline for hours trying to rebook my flight.
So onto, landing on a surface, getting on transport, digital transfer, and be onto someone, awareness, suspicion, or discovery.
And the one contrast to remember above everything else, into you means you like someone. Onto you means you have figured them out.
So we have to, into, and onto. 3 words, 1 framework. But now we need to talk about something that surprises almost everyone.
Sometimes the same sentence, the same verb, the same noun completely changes meaning when you change the preposition.
Not just the grammar, the actual meaning of what you were saying.
Completely. And we already saw the biggest one in the last section. Let's start there.
I am into you. I am onto you.
Same verb, same pronoun, one preposition different. But listen to how different those two sentences feel.
I am into you. I like you. I'm attracted to you. Something warm and positive.
I am on to you. I know what you are doing. I have figured you out. Something completely different.
If you said the wrong one on a date, that would be a very awkward evening.
Very awkward evening, and probably a short one.
Now, the second contrast, and this one is physical, impossible versus perfectly natural.
She climbed into the roof.
Apply the test. After the movement, where did she end up? Inside the roof, inside the ceiling structure, which is physically not possible unless she is a ghost.
So that sentence is wrong.
That sentence is wrong. The correct sentence is, she climbed onto the roof. After the movement, she ended up on top of the surface of the roof, fixing tiles, not haunting the building.
Same verb, climbed. One preposition different. One sentence is impossible. One sentence is perfectly natural.
And that is what a preposition can do. It does not just change grammar, it changes reality.
Now the third contrast, and this one is my favorite because it's funny. She walked to the door. She walked into the door.
She walked to the door. She went toward the door. She arrived at it, probably to open it.
Perfectly normal. Now she walked into the door.
She collided with the door. She was not looking where she was going, and she hit it with her face.
The spatial logic makes it immediately clear. To gets you to the door. Into means you crossed the plane of the door with your body.
One preposition, the difference between arriving at a door and walking into it with your face.
And this is exactly why choosing carefully matters. The wrong preposition does not just sound unnatural, sometimes it tells a completely different story.
Same verb, different preposition, different world.
Which is why the framework is so useful. Ask the test question every time. Where did it end up? Inside, into, on top, onto, at a point, to.
And the answer will almost always tell you which word to use.
Almost always. All right, there are a few mistakes that catch people often, and those are exactly what we are looking at next.
We're going to apply the framework to each one, starting with the 2 sentences from the very beginning of today's episode.
The text message.
The text message.
The first one, I finally moved in my new place last weekend.
Apply the test. After the movement, where did she end up?
Inside her new apartment. She crossed a boundary. She entered an interior.
So that is into, not in.
Always into for entering an enclosed space.
I finally moved into my new place. The boundary was crossed. In alone does not show that movement. Into does.
And the difference matters because in suggests she was already there. Into tells you she crossed into it.
Exactly. She was outside, now she's inside. That crossing, that is into.
Mistake number 1 fixed. I finally moved into my new place. Now, mistake number 2 from the message.
I left my keys onto the counter.
And this one is interesting because onto is not completely wrong in the sense of the spatial idea. The keys did land on a surface.
You're right, the spatial idea is there, but onto carries a sense of active movement, something arriving on a surface through deliberate action. I loaded the boxes onto the truck. I jumped onto the stage.
Those are active movements landing on surfaces.
But leaving keys on a counter is not really an active landing.
It's not. The keys are just sitting there, no real movement involved. And for that, the correct word is simply on. I left my keys on the counter.
So on for static position, onto for active movement landing on a surface.
That's the distinction. Onto always implies movement arriving somewhere. On describes where something already is.
Mistake number 2 fixed. I left my keys on the counter. Now, mistake number 3, and this one catches almost every learner at some point.
I got in the bus.
Apply the test. Is a bus an enclosed personal space you step down into?
No, a bus is a large public vehicle. You step up and board it. You land on its floor, a surface. That is on to, or more naturally, on.
So I got on the bus, or I got onto the bus.
Both correct. And when you leave, I got off the bus, not I got out of the bus.
And the car?
The car is the opposite. It is a small enclosed space. You step down and in. I got into the car. And when you leave, I got out of the car, not I got off the car.
So the exit follows the entry. Onto and off for surface transport. Into and out of for enclosed transport.
Every time.
Mistake number 3, fixed. Now, mistake number 4, and this one is very common for learners at every level.
She is into the kitchen.
Meaning she is in the kitchen, but the learner wrote into instead of in.
And the problem is that into always signals movement, crossing a boundary. But if there is no movement, if she is simply already there, into is wrong.
Apply the test. Is she moving? Is she crossing a boundary?
No, she is just there, already in the kitchen, standing in it, no movement involved.
So that is in, not into.
She is in the kitchen, static, no movement, in. But she walked into the kitchen, that is movement. She crossed the boundary of the doorway, into.
So the rule is into always needs movement. If there is no movement, use in.
Always. Into is a direction word, and direction words need movement to exist.
Now let us hear it all working together in a real conversation.
The scenario, my friend Layla just moved into a new apartment. I am calling her to hear all about it. Mike, you are Layla.
I am Layla. Let us go.
Layla, I have been waiting to hear from you. How is the new place?
It is amazing. I cannot believe I finally moved into my own apartment. It feels so good.
I can imagine. How did the moving day go?
Honestly, it was chaos. We loaded everything onto the moving truck at 7 in the morning, and then when we got to the new place, the movers dropped the sofa onto the floor in completely the wrong spot.
Oh no, did you manage to fix it?
Eventually, my brother and I pushed it onto the frame ourselves. It took us 20 minutes.
And the apartment itself, what is it like?
It is beautiful. I walked into the living room for the first time and I just stopped. The light coming in through the windows, I burst into tears, honestly.
I love that. And how are you settling in?
Really well. I've been into interior design for a while now, so I already have so many ideas for the space.
I did not know you were into that.
I got into it about 2 years ago. I think I'm onto something really interesting with the color scheme, actually.
Tell me everything.
So I went to 3 different paint shops yesterday to find exactly the right shade. I'm thinking a deep green for the living room walls.
That sounds incredible. And how far is the new place from work?
Really close, actually. I walked to the office this morning for the first time, 15 minutes door to door.
That is perfect. You're going to love it there, Layla.
I already do. Come visit soon.
I will. Let us pause there. Did you notice how many times to, into, and onto came up in that conversation?
Did you notice how many times to, into, and onto came up in that conversation?
Let us pick some out. Layla said, I finally moved into my own apartment.
Into, she crossed a boundary. She went from outside to inside a new home. The test, did she end up inside something? Yes, into.
And we loaded everything onto the moving truck.
Onto, the boxes moved and landed on the surface of the truck floor. The test, did things end up on top of something? Yes, onto.
And the movers dropped the sofa onto the floor.
Onto again, the sofa moved through the air and landed on the surface of the floor, on top of it, onto.
And I walked into the living room for the first time.
Into, she crossed the boundary of the doorway and ended up inside the room, into.
And I went to 3 different paint shops.
To, she moved toward a destination. She arrived at a point. No interior crossed, no surface landed on, just a destination reached. To.
And I am into interior design. I got into it about 2 years ago.
Into, she entered a state of deep interest. She crossed into it, and she is fully inside it. The figurative use of into, but the spatial logic is identical.
And I think I am on to something with the color scheme.
Onto, she has arrived at a discovery. She has landed on something significant. The idiom, but the surface logic is still there underneath it.
And we got them all right naturally, without stopping to think about grammar.
Because when the framework becomes natural, you stop thinking about rules. You just speak.
That is always the goal, not to think about grammar while you talk, just to talk.
And to, into, and onto will just come out correctly.
Every time. And that is exactly what today was about.
Getting these 3 words so clear that you never have to think about them again.
So let us lock it all in. Fast.
To, the destination word. You are moving toward a point, a place, a person. Go to the store. Walk to the office. Give the book to a friend.
Into, the boundary word. You are crossing from outside to inside. Walk into the room. Get into the car. Move into a new place. And figuratively, be into something you love. Burst into tears. Run into an old friend.
Onto, the surface word. You are landing on top of something. Jump onto the table. Get onto the bus. Upload onto Instagram. And be onto something important, or be onto someone who is hiding something.
And the one test question that ties everything together. After the movement, where did it end up?
Inside something, into.
On top of something, onto.
At a point, to.
And if there is no movement at all, use in or on, not into or onto.
And the one contrast to remember above everything else.
I am into you. I like you.
I am on to you. I have figured you out.
One preposition, completely different world.
Now, your challenge for this week. Write 3 sentences in the comments below. 1 with to, 1 with into, 1 with onto. Your real life, your real week.
And if today's episode helped you, please subscribe to Say It wherever you are listening right now.
Share it with one person who is learning English. It genuinely helps us reach more learners just like you.
See you there. Take care, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.